of. It's the evil and the ugliness of people's hearts these days is everywhere.
This is Franky Rose's Think Tank. Here's your host, Franky Rose.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Think Tank. So we've had a shooting in Rochester Hills in a splash pad.
States it stretches at least a mile, possibly more. There was a neighbor or a neighbor or whoever was in the area that Dave did speak to and was saying that it sounds like the action may be going on in one of the back ends of this neighborhood, but of course we have to wait on Mike Bouchard to officially confirm that.
Yeah. One thing we should also say is that part of the way that this came to the attention of law enforcement, of course, 911 calls were coming in almost immediately after the shooting. But there was a sergeant listening to basically some new technology that the Oakland County Sheriff's Office has said, and we've said it a number of times. They have a tremendous amount of experience. Mike Bouchard is very involved in national organizations that deal with the latest developments on policing. So they were able to get there in 2 minutes before the first call even came in. And we also know that they were able to recover a weapon very, very quickly here.
It was a 9mm, right? 9mm Glock.
That's right. A 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun. And the number of bullets possibly fired here, it's gut-wrenching. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to even say. Yeah. 28 times this person.
More than 24 times that this person is shot. He reloaded multiple times, but police did recover some of those handguns. And as you saw over when Sky Fox was over the immediate scene, there were a number of not shell casings, but evidence markers on the ground. When you see those evidence markers, and we've seen them, we've been to crime scenes before, but most times those are shell casings that are being recovered by forensics. We mentioned the witness that Dave spoke to earlier. We want to get to him right now.
I was. Luckily, God told me to just go to the pool. Just go to the pool, and you don't need to go to no splash pad and get shot up.
Have you been to that splash pad before?
I have, and
on a day like today, like it is a Saturday, it was a nice day.
Yeah.
Is it crowded typically, or?
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Right. But usually, it's not somewhere you go to get shot up at.
No.
Quick recap. I know that we were going to pull up some more information, but quick recap. So what Dave was talking to that witness about was he was going to go to the splash pad today. He got the alert on his phone after the shooting, and instead of going to the splash pad, he did go to the pool. So he was just thankful that he did not have to get caught in that situation. But obviously, as you see that as he's speaking with Dave, he is very shaken up at the idea of what could have happened.
Well, there are probably a lot of people there in that community who are thinking the same.
On a day like today, especially.
Especially. It's warm out. It's beautiful out. This is the middle of the day. This is an incredibly safe community. Or so we obviously believe, and it has historically been. Many people likely were on their way there and are getting the alerts on their phones or have gotten the alerts on their phones and thinking, thank God. Thank God I didn't go to this park today.
Yeah, their lives have been forever changed.
And you never want to live in that kind of situation. And obviously there are a number of people, especially young people, who are going to have to recover not just physically from this, but emotionally, mentally. It might be a lifelong process. We have seen reaction from a number of lawmakers. We obviously saw Congressman John James out there.
He was right there by Mike Bouchard.
The mayor of Rochester Hills. We also got a statement from Governor Gretchen Whitmer that we'd like to share with you now. Governor Whitmer reacting on X saying, quote, "I am heartbroken to learn about the shooting in Rochester Hills. We are monitoring the situation as updates continue to come in and are in touch with local officials." Sadly, she's been here before.
Right. Twice. I mean, if you count Michigan State back in 2023, February 2023, and then before that, it was Oxford at the end of 2022. Right. Yeah. Wait.
Sometimes it's hard to keep track because sadly we've had so many.
Right.
Sadly we've had so many. We also
21. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So November 2021 was Oxford. February 2023 was Michigan State.
Right. And we have to also note that all of these victims have gone to multiple hospitals.
Right.
It's our understanding that at least 4. And as you mentioned, sometimes victims take themselves to the
sometimes
hospital.
you have a situation where not everyone who may have been either grazed by a bullet or shot goes with the first responder.
Right.
Sometimes they will hop in a car and take themselves. And so right now we are saying 9, possibly 10. The number could go up depending on the amount of people who maybe check themselves into the hospital without paramedics and maybe, drove there themselves. We also do have a statement from Corwell. We want to get to that and bring that up for you real quick. It says, quote, "Our hearts are with those who were impacted by the shooting that occurred in Rochester Hills. We can confirm that our team is caring for some of the victims, but we are not releasing any additional information."
We just want to give you a brief update. It's 9:47 now. We've been on the air for a couple of hours talking about a tragedy that unfolded in Rochester Hills. Around 5:11 is when the call came in, and it appears that law enforcement were able to get to the scene within 2 minutes. Again, we have said at least 9 people injured, maybe 10 victims, many of them suffering from gunshot wounds. Varying types of injuries is what the Oakland County Sheriff said during his press conference. This person just got out of a vehicle and started shooting at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, a place where families were gathered, where young people were. A victim, we understand, as young as 8 years old, was shot. Now, we don't know the types of injuries, all of the types of injuries involved here. We don't know the severity of those injuries. Certainly our thoughts and prayers are with all of the victims and their families, as many of them. Another element that we have to mention, your family members who maybe are hearing through us, through notifications, oh my gosh, my dad had planned to be at that splash pad with some friends, or was taking, my children there. I don't know what the status of things are. I can't reach them.
Father's Day weekend. This is a time that a lot of people were probably going to head out there. It was a nice warm spring evening. And this is an opportunity, as you were saying, Hillary, this is an opportunity that if you're watching this and you're not too sure about your family member, check in on them, give them a call, send them a text. Just check in on them, check in on their well-being. And if you know that they're a person that visits this splash pad out there, just see how they're doing. Because even if they weren't there today, the fact that they have been there before or would go there on a day like today, it is jarring, especially in a neighborhood like Rochester Hills. But as you're looking now live, the scene is quickly turned tonight. And this is where both Dave Spencer and Timothy Robertson have been, for the better part of an hour, hour and a half, almost 2 hours now. But the law enforcement presence continues to remain very significant, a very strong presence, a number of cars, and you see several of them are from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. But this is the perimeter where Dave and Timothy have been stationed so far. And then, a few yards, few dozen, maybe 100 yards from where they are is the entrance of the DeQuinder Estates. And that is where this situation has taken a turn, where police have, cornered a suspect in a home in that neighborhood, but they're trying to hopefully negotiate a peaceful end. We saw, 2 SWAT vehicles. As Dave was speaking to us, maybe about 20, 30 minutes ago, one of the SWAT vehicles had left, and that's the one Dave had said that he had first noticed when he got there, that had driven into the neighborhood. And then I know that as you were talking with Dave and I had hopped in here, there was a much larger SWAT truck that took a turn into the neighborhood. Likely that may be connected to when Dave was hearing someone over a loudspeaker trying to talk with a suspect.
Possibly coax them out,
Yes.
but unclear because he is a distance from that inner scene. And you can just think of this sort of as concentric circles, because there's the outer perimeter and then the perimeter inside, close to where this home is. The sheriff, we should note, was very clear not to say barricaded gunman situation, which is typically how we would describe this. It could be because the suspect, the person they believe is a suspect, dropped a handgun, apparently. Law enforcement did recover a 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun. We know that the sheriff's office also was trying to secure a search warrant to do some more evidence collecting, which of course is related to this. We just don't know in what way and where that searching was conducted and how it relates to obviously their interest in getting a peaceful resolution to this at this time. Now,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Something that we can always say too, because we're still waiting on the Oakland County Sheriff to brief us, to give us an update. We can tell you what the steps are, because we've had so many of these situations, so many of these things that are similar to a barricaded gunman situation. Someone inside of a home they're trying to coax out, where they don't know if there's a person inside with the suspect. They don't know how many weapons are inside with the suspect. They're always going to be using a qualified negotiator. So likely who we heard over the loud phone was a negotiator who has done this before, who has talked with suspects before. Now, they're also likely not going to try to take any too aggressive actions right at the outset. I mean, that can change, but that's usually the first line of defense. I don't want to be too aggressive with this person. And the most important thing, and which is why we in the media have learned over time to be very careful with displaying the tactical movements and positioning of law enforcement. They want to make sure all uniformed personnel, all ranks, police vehicles, equipment, weapons, etc., should be kept out of the view of the barricaded person or the person who is inside. And that is very, very important. And of course, you can see they've established a perimeter, and we are being kept just on the edge of that at the DeQuinder Estates. This is right on the border, by the way, between Rochester and Shelby Township, about a mile from the original scene, as I believe what Dave told us.
And as you were saying earlier, you know, for these first responders, this is also, they have families that they want to return home to too.
Of course.
And so that is why they're taking all this added precaution, extra caution. Dave did say that compared to scenes that he has been at before, there is a sense of urgency. And I know you see officers in the middle of the street closer to the entrance of DeQuinder Estates, but he said there's not that heightened sense of urgency. Of course, in a situation like this, police want to get the suspected gunman in custody as soon as possible before this person can try to injure someone else. Hillary, you'd mentioned that Sheriff Bouchard did not call this a barricade situation.
Right.
I did have a moment as you were explaining everything. Colorado State, they have Colorado State Police. They have what a barricaded situation is, and I'll read that definition for you. It is an incident where a person maintains a position of cover or concealment and ignores or resists law enforcement personnel, and it is reasonable to believe that the suspect is armed with a dangerous or deadly weapon. So those last few words are key, because as you were saying, and as we have heard, Sheriff Bouchard has been very delicate in not addressing this as a barricaded situation. But again, in a barricaded situation, it is believed that the subject is armed with a dangerous or deadly weapon. We do know that police have recovered a weapon, the 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun. But what we do not know is, in the home where this suspect is there another weapon? And if so, where would it be in the house? And I think as you're seeing this, seems like there's a couple people that are walking out of the entrance of DeQuinder Estates. They
look like civilians. It's difficult to tell from this vantage point, but it does appear that those appear to be civilians. And of course, there are law enforcement. We can see on the back, they're identified, several of them. It looks like about 5, and obviously the flashing lights there with the multiple Oakland County Sheriff's Office vehicles. It looks like there's an EMS just to the right of the screen behind. Now, inside the secondary perimeter, if you will, beyond where we have Dave stationed and Timothy Robertson, they're going to be looking at everything. They're going to be looking at possible stairwells, if this is one level or two. They're going to be looking at any skylights, the possibility for the suspect to escape that way. They're going to be looking at any windows, any points of egress or ingress into the home. Some definition to describe this as a barricaded situation. I think probably the reason that the sheriff was very careful not to go to that level is we just don't know what the weapon situation is inside.
Yeah, at the time that he was speaking, maybe he wasn't 100% sure. They needed more intel. And so hopefully Sheriff Bouchard at some point this evening can address the media again and answer some more questions and give us an update. Because these kind of situations, Hillary, as you know, they can last for hours. Like this could last well past midnight.
And we'll be with you through it all. We're also seeing, as we mentioned earlier, Congressman John James is out there flanking Sheriff Mike Bouchard along with the Rochester Hills mayor. Now we're seeing State Senator Michael Weber, who is a Rochester Hills resident, also issue a statement. He says, "I was heartbroken to learn of the horrific shooting incident that shocked our community today. I am praying for the victims and their families. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our first responders, including the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, the Rochester Police Department, and nearby paramedics who responded quickly. The greater Rochester area will remain a strong community, and we will support each other during this tragic time."
As you were saying that, we did see a police van pull up and kind of situate itself near the entrance, and it is backing up now. Where it will go may give us an indication of where this scene or that interior perimeter is. However, it is going to be very hard to see where that driver goes, where that van goes in this kind of situation, especially as we are in nightfall, as we approach 10 o'clock. And this has been a developing situation. We see a door open. This has been a developing situation from start until now, for about 5 hours, from the shooting at the splash pad to where we are now.
And something the incident commander also will be working on, again, just based on the fact that sadly we've had to deal with this kind of situation all across America and here in Michigan a number of times. They are going to be now possibly even contacting additional what they call contact teams that could be deployed. So at any point also, federal agents could already be there, maybe being deployed. We do have FBI agents who are here in Detroit. They have a command post here. And part of this is also managing the public, because you don't want any kind of collateral damage. Any people who are there, it looks like we have Dave Spencer, who may have just gotten some additional information about what's going on. And we can see Dave turning around and looking behind him. Dave, what update do you have for us?
Just some observations that I've made since I've been here, just to kind of help let people know what's going on at this very moment. I think you guys have referenced the armored vehicle that just kind of moved into a position here. We watched that one had been on the scene for quite some time, and then we watched it kind of reverse into the position now, just to kind of give people an understanding of where we are. We're right at the entrance to the DeQuinder Estates. That's where all this effort is being focused. That's where this perimeter has been set up, keeping the public at bay to let the law enforcement do their jobs here. And we watched that vehicle kind of get into position, and then see some people kind of hanging around the rear of that vehicle. No indication that they're going to move in any further from where they are now. And again, as you guys have been pointing out, we're not quite sure how deep into the mobile home park the scene actually is, where they have this alleged suspect kept, and are waiting for additional information on the status of if they are still negotiating with him, if they have any updates on his current condition, if he's in custody. All of those are still unknown at this time. The sheriff has been on scene here. The sheriff, Mike Bouchard, arrived on scene probably about an hour ago, got out of his vehicle. He parked right next to where we are standing right here, walked across the street into the mobile home park, and has not been seen since that time. We don't know what, I'm sure he's very hands-on in the negotiation factors, but to what degree degree, it's unknown until he comes back and kind of gives us an update. But yeah, it's been pretty static up until that point where that armored vehicle just kind of moved into position. We've seen some other kind of vehicles shift around, but nobody has really. There's not been a strong police presence influx, and there hasn't been any that have been leaving the scene either. Just kind of pretty static to that point, other than what we've seen. Again, this has been the scene for quite some time, a few hours now. I arrived here on 8 o'clock, and I know that some of the bystanders, we were one of the first media outlets here. Some of the bystanders had been here close to an hour afterwards. Most of them living quite nearby, saw all the commotion going on right here on Willowwood off to Quinder. It's just south of Hamlin, on the border of Rochester and Shelby Township, and just out of curiosity wanted to know what was going on. They had obviously, most of them had heard about what took place just a mile down the road at the splash pad, where that gunman allegedly opened fire and injuring, or to some degree wounding, 9 to 10 people to various degrees. So just a kind of a recap. This perimeter has been set up. The actual mobile home estate is very large in scope, dozens of units. We watched a few armored vehicles kind of pull in, turn to the right once they entered the neighborhood, and then a large crop of trees right there blocking any sort of further developments, any further movements from that point on. And that's the way it's kind of stayed up until the point where roughly an hour ago we heard one call over the loudspeaker. I couldn't quite make it out. Now, a person did tell me that we interviewed that they were telling somebody to come out. I cannot confirm that that was indeed the case. I heard them say something, and it stands to reason that that's likely what they were saying as you watch a vehicle kind of leave the scene, and as we wait for further information to come out as to the status of any sort of negotiations, any sort of custody, or what's going on with this person that is somewhere likely in the Quinder Estates mobile home park. Back to you guys.
If we could ask you, Dave, because this is often what will happen, they'll literally send one member of law enforcement or sometimes a team to knock on the doors of nearby individuals to tell them to shelter in their homes. Do you know if they have done that in this area?
I did get one report just from again, we're not allowed to enter there, but somebody who has a relative that lives within that perimeter there that said that their neighbor, that's what happened to their neighbor, that they were told that they needed to leave. That this was few hours ago at this point, and since that time, we have noticed a number of people. Now, they were coming from a different direction from where the SWAT vehicles came, but we've noticed some cars, some vehicles leaving the scene. Presumably people that live over there in the Quinder Estates, they were allowed to leave. We haven't seen anyone, just citizens being able to walk across the street and go to their resident. I don't know if anybody is still trying to do that at this point, but that has not been the case. We haven't even seen much of an effort of anyone to get inside there. I think they understand the situation. Nobody is looking to jeopardize anything. And so, yeah, that's currently where we stand in terms of if everyone was asked to evacuate. I don't know the extent of which, just that one report from anecdotally from a person that's just here standing with me on the perimeter.
Hey, Dave, I know you spoke to a witness earlier. We have seen people since then kind of walking near the entrance. I know that before we came to you moments ago, we did see two people kind of walk out of the entrance and then walk back in. You described this scene earlier as a sense of urgency, but not a heightened sense of urgency. Has the mood changed since we last checked in with you?
No, minus the positioning of that armored vehicle that's right here at the entrance. That's the only thing that's really changed. In terms of the mannerisms of the law enforcement officers, not really. I haven't seen anyone kind of running towards any direction. They're walking with a purpose. Everybody here knows what's at stake, and they know the seriousness of this. So nobody's taking this any kind of lightly. But yes, they're not in a defensive position by any stretch of the imagination here, at least where I'm standing. Again, it's hard for me to tell from this vantage point, even as night has fallen and I can kind of look over and see if there's any other police lights deep within the subdivision there, I can't tell. So I don't know what it's like closer to the scene, but at this point, from this perimeter, no, there's urgency, but not a heightened sense of that.
And you haven't seen DTE or Consumers Energy over there maybe to try to cut the power at all?
No, I have not seen any of that. As we speak now, another police vehicle is entering the scene here. But no, there's been no utility crews or anything to that effect. It's been all law enforcement. That's been the only one that's the only vehicles that are allowed to kind of breach the perimeter at this point. So yeah, here we go. We see one of these vehicles that I mentioned earlier. Theoretically, just a person that lives within there being allowed to leave. So that is allowed to happen. Again, nobody's being allowed entry. But yes, the power is still on, presumably. I could see some lights just off into the distance that you would say that, yeah, reason to believe the power is still on at least.
And I understand this may not be a question that you can answer, but obviously law enforcement stages us in certain areas, usually for safety, sometimes just to keep us out of the way. Did they tell you when they put you there outside of the DeQuinder Estates how far you are from the actual scene? Any kind of general concept of how close you may be or how deep inside the home is that's being targeted?
No, unfortunately, no. And that may just be because the people that are setting up the perimeter might not know. I mean, honestly, they have a job to do. They're concentrating on their job, letting the other law enforcement agents concentrate on theirs. Now, that being said, maybe an aerial view. I know we had Sky Foxes went to refuel and is now back up in the air. That might give us a better sense of where it is. I don't have a monitor out here, so I can't see where it's positioned right now. But that possibly could give us a little bit more detail. But from where I'm standing, it's nearly impossible for me to tell.
Yeah, and we understand that we're asking you, to answer questions that I know you haven't had a chance to interface with law enforcement. Obviously, Mike Bouchard is there working the scene. He is a seasoned investigator himself, although they will be using, of course, trained negotiators who can deal with the suspect. Any update maybe we might hear from the sheriff or someone from the sheriff's office?
No, yeah, they haven't given us, as soon as he arrived, he paid no notice to us, as you wouldn't think he would, and went directly into the scene and to kind of gather whatever intel he could. And that's the last we saw of him. It's hard to tell now that night has fallen, outside of these flashing lights, anything really that's going on beyond this perimeter. So it's anyone's guess when that sheriff or Sheriff Mike Bouchard will come back and hopefully provide us an update relatively soon.
Dave, we do appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
I see him now, actually.
Okay.
I think I see him now. So hopefully we'll get that update relatively soon. We'll see where he goes. It looks like he's getting back into his vehicle. Let's see if we could get him.
Yeah.
So as you're watching this, Dave Spencer is at the DeQuinder Estates.
Office.
Trying to catch up with Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard.
Yeah, he is approaching Oakland County
11
Sheriff
at the
Bouchard.
office, he said, I think.
Right.
Thank you very much, Sheriff.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
That the suspect is. Now, I don't want to say it because I didn't hear it for certain, but he might have an update for us. He said at 11 o'clock at the sheriff's office.
Is when you're expecting that you'll get an update on exactly what happened here.
Correct.
Okay.
That's when he just left the scene and is theoretically going to give us an update in about a little less than an hour from now as to what he has learned here. This still remains unchanged outside of the fact that the sheriff's no longer here. So yeah, hopefully we'll get that update soon.
I'm going to let you go so you can kind of maybe touch base
Right,
with maybe public information officers who might be able to confirm some of what I believe I also may have heard kind of in the distance there, which we don't want to say anything that's not confirmed at this stage. But if we could just ask, we saw what looked like some civilians leaving. Now, they look to be almost like one maybe in a bathrobe. Have you seen civilians coming from the DeQuinder Estates?
Yeah, I've seen them leaving from there, but not entering too many, or at least not on vehicles. I mean, maybe they're walking across with permission, but yeah, there's vehicles leaving here, but not they're all just regular people seemingly that live there. I haven't seen any the police, any of those armored vehicles leave quite yet. It is quite possible that they have a scene to process still, and but the fact that the sheriff is no longer here. People can draw some reasonable conclusions from that. I don't want to speculate anything that I can't confirm. I think he did say something, but I hesitant to say what it was just because I didn't hear it with my own ears.
Well, like you said, we'll wait until 11 o'clock, Oakland County Sheriff's Office, where they will have a news conference, hopefully give us an update and confirm what has happened. So that was Dave Spencer reporting live from DeQuinder Estates, where there was a situation where the suspected gunman, who is accused of shooting 9, possibly 10 people, over at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, was cornered by SWAT and by authorities, and they were trying to reach a more peaceful resolution to this.
And to be clear, from what we understand, the words that the Oakland County Sheriff used in that previous press conference was contained in, and specifically inside of a home. And at that time, and this has been now almost 2.5 hours ago, the sheriff was saying they weren't sure if there were any weapons inside of the home. They weren't even sure at that point if there was another person or people inside of the home with this particular suspect accused, again, of possibly injuring 9 or 10 people, many of them suffering gunshot wounds. The sheriff, again, saying that there were various injuries.
I'm not sure why they keep timing out.
People, many of them suffering gunshot wounds. The sheriff, again, saying that there were various injuries.
It happened over at the Rochester Hills Splash Pad earlier today. So the call came in around 5 o'clock. Sheriff's office or investigators used some new technology to help them out and try to get to the scene within minutes. They recovered a 9mm handgun, and they also recovered 3 empty magazines. Now, it is, the investigators have said that the suspect appears to have fired 28 times in a crowd of people. And we know that there are at least 9, possibly 10 victims here. And one of them is as young as 8 years old.
As young as 8 years old.
So imagine this is a nice, warm weekend. People will go to the splash pad. This is Father's Day weekend, and they're having to deal with a tragedy like this. The victims have experienced all kinds of injuries. So varying injuries, we haven't got an idea of what those injuries are or what to what extent. We do know that a team at Corewell Health is helping out.
We know that.
Some of these victims, they've been to 4 different hospitals.
At least four
different hospitals at this moment. And but getting back to the shooting here, authorities did say that the suspect had hopped out of the car and just started shooting. Had no relation, as it appears of now, had no relation to any of the victims who were at that splash pad. And then it trickled down to that suspect being contained in a home at DeQuinder Estates, where you saw Dave Spencer. And now we're expecting an update in the next 45 minutes from Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard. Camila Miri has been at the splash pad scene, so she was updating us when this initial shooting happened. And then Dave has been with us on the back end as they have been talking about trying to de-escalate this contained situation.
Yeah, and the other thing we can say too is that the phrase that the Oakland County Sheriff used was that this was incredibly random, very random. So as of now, it doesn't look like there's any relationship between the shooter and the victims. It's very difficult at this point to necessarily pin down exactly what kind of injuries everybody has. But of course, multiple people are suffering from gunshot wounds, and there are various injuries, as we said. Now, we know also regarding that contained suspect inside of a home, the Oakland County Sheriff not only gave the update that he's going to be giving some kind of press conference to us at 11 o'clock at the sheriff's office, but he also left the scene, according to Dave, who was there at the DeQuinder Estates, where we believe that suspect had been contained within a home. Now, we also want to mention that if you were sheltering in place, many people have known for a long time, but in case they didn't get the message, we don't want to assume. If you were sheltering in place near the park, which was on Auburn Road, east of John R., you are able to leave. We never want to assume that someone who may have been without their phone, or maybe the power went out of their phone or whatever, they're just learning what's going on here. If you were sheltering in place near Auburn Road, east of John R., it is safe for you to leave, but please do avoid that area. That is where the splash pad is located. This is where, still at this hour, I'm certain law enforcement are still collecting evidence, which is such an important
and it will
critical
likely
piece of
be a
this.
crime scene, not just at the end of the day today, but tomorrow and in the days to come for this week. That scene, that splash pad, will likely remain a crime scene, just as the scene over at DeQuinder Estates, wherever they are in that perimeter, will be a part of this crime scene as well.
And we saw a SWAT on scene. We saw armored vehicles, of course, on scene. And the sheriff didn't give us very much detail about the search warrant that he was trying to secure. But I suspect because that original press conference happened around 7:40 p.m., and we're now approaching 10:20 at night, very likely that search warrant was acquired. That may have provided additional evidence, information that allowed them to deal with this suspect. Of course, we are hoping that there was a peaceful resolution here, but unclear what happened in that regard. Some of the process for this, by the way, we know is established, sadly well established, because we have had so many mass shootings in this country. So there is a protocol. Obviously, they established two perimeters there, an external perimeter and an internal perimeter. Where we saw Dave, that was the external perimeter, where we could kind of hear in the distance what was going on. Really, that 11 o'clock press conference is going to be the thing that gives us more concrete information about maybe even what the results of that search warrant were, and more about what happened. Another thing we want to note, the sad part of how young some of these children were, at least one child 8 years old.
And you have to imagine at a splash pad, there likely would have been more children there.
Right. It's awful and as terrible as this is, it's very possible that that was a very, very populated area where more people could have been injured, even more than possibly 10.
The witness that Dave spoke to outside of DeQuinder Estates had even said that during this time of year, that area, that splash pad, is very popular. And that witness had even said that for a moment, he thought about going to the splash pad today, but he said that God told him to go to the pool. And he got the update about the shooting over his phone, and he was grateful that he did not go to the splash pad. This is something that will definitely have a lot of effect, not just on the immediate victims, but their families and this Rochester Hills community. I know that you're from this area, and I think for a lot of people who are just catching up to us and may not be as familiar with Rochester Hills, can you describe the neighborhood and that community in that area for us?
We have a lot of people who are from that general area of Oakland County, and it is an incredibly safe community. Right there at that splash pad, right at Auburn, just east of John R., this is a place where people can walk to and from. This is a place where people do walk to and from. And as we know historically, it's not a secret to anyone. We don't really cover very often shootings in Rochester Hills. In fact, in the years that I've been here, I can't ever remember covering a multiple shooting or a mass shooting in Rochester Hills, ever. So this is reverberating throughout that community right now. Where we see, and we're being very careful about what we're saying on social media and what folks are, or how they're responding and what they're saying about what they encountered. We don't want to release any of that information until we're able to check with the primary sources, right? But we are seeing, a lot of people just expressing how gut-wrenching this is for them as community members. And the thing about a community like Rochester Hills, and really many communities in Metro Detroit, they are tight-knit. So even if someone doesn't have a family member there, or if they're hoping that their loved one is recovering in the hospital, their neighbors are praying.
Right.
Their neighbors are hoping. Their neighbors are concerned. this is that kind of community. I mean, and it is a very Michigan way.
Right.
We come together and we embrace our neighbors, and their pain is all of our pain.
Unfortunately, between Oxford and Michigan State in this, it has happened too many times. We do want to give you an update, and we have heard that, again, this is a very fluid situation. So we did hear that now the shooting victims, there's 8 shooting victims that we have heard. So initially we had heard 9, possibly 10. Now we have a number that is 8 shooting victims. So we hope to, in the next 40 minutes, Dave Spencer is going to go to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, and we're going to hear from Sheriff Mike Bouchard after a very, very busy day for the sheriff, for his crews, and we're going to get an update on the situation about the Rochester Hills shooting. One thing I did want to mention, and you mentioned social media,
Right.
and that has been something that has been kind of a thorn in the side of law enforcement, because as they're trying to get the right information out, and I know we saw this during Michigan State, there are people who may hear things, and I know
Right.
you had hinted at this, moments ago. They hear things on social media, so then they'll put it on social media, and then it travels fast.
Right. It moves like wildfire.
Right. And so
sometimes.
then law enforcement is not only trying to de-escalate an active situation, but they're trying to de-escalate what is being said on social media so people don't get more anxious or fearful of what is unfolding.
Well, a few things to note about that. So number one, while it can be very problematic for law enforcement to control the accurate information, we just saw a very big update in this case,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So we heard out of the sheriff's mouth that 9 or 10 people might have been wounded. Now,
Yes.
the reason that we've also been very careful about saying they've been injured is because the sheriff said we don't know necessarily what all of the injuries are, right? So in a situation where you're in a public space, people are literally running for their lives. Someone can trip. Someone can maybe run into something. They can fall or have a puncture wound that may mirror a gunshot wound. So we're being very careful about that. And they have multiple scenes and also multiple hospitals that they're dealing with, checking in with those victims to see if they were in fact there because of this. But we can update you. 8 people, according to the new information we're getting, 8 people confirmed shot. The other thing I'll say about social media, it is a double-edged sword. Because a lot of the very good new information we were getting when the shelter in place was lifted, for example, that came through social media, right? Oakland County Sheriff, when he was talking about this suspect who was contained inside of a home, that was relayed through social media. So it is a double-edged sword.
Yes.
You have citizens who are reacting, who are putting information out there, who are saying what they're seeing, and we're getting some of these chilling stories that are coming in, firsthand accounts. But then at the same time, it allows law enforcement to be able to inform not just the public, but us, so that we can relay that information because they're working in multiple places. I actually just texted the undersheriff asking if he could maybe come on and do a quick interview with us. And he is just reiterating that they have the 11 p.m. press conference at the sheriff's office. And so that they're basically indicating to us that they're going to be focusing all their efforts on updates at 11 o'clock. And that's likely when we'll know more.
You mentioned social media. We do have a statement from Governor Gretchen Whitmer that was posted on X earlier this evening. If we can bring that up for you, we'll read that to you. The governor says that, quote, "I am heartbroken to learn about the shooting in Rochester Hills. We are monitoring the situation as updates continue to come in and are in touch with local officials." And again, this is a situation that is unfortunately all too familiar for the governor's office, as well as the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, because they've had to deal with, the governor was in touch with the community of Oxford and helping them heal from that situation. And she was also in touch with the community at Michigan State and trying to help them heal as well. We do also have a statement from Corwell, and we just want to bring that to you as we are updating you that 8 people are shot. Can we get that Corwell statement up for us, for our viewers, please? That we're doing that. Corwell is helping out with the situation.
Let's take this one. This one is from State Senator, and I think they've advanced it, but that's okay. State Senator Michael Weber of Rochester Hills. There we have it. I was heartbroken to learn of the horrific shooting incident that shocked our community today. I am praying for the victims and their families. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our first responders, including the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, the Rochester Police Department, and nearby paramedics who responded quickly. The greater Rochester area will remain a strong community, and we will support each other during this tragic time.
It's like you said, Hillary, in times like this, we see the community come together. And this is that Cornwall Health statement, quote, "Our hearts are with those who were impacted by the shooting that occurred in Rochester Hills. We can confirm that our team is caring for some of those victims." And again, we have learned that 8 people were shot. But that was basically all that they were going to say, is that they have teams that are helping out those victims. But getting back to State Senator Weber's statement, and it pairs along with what you were saying, that in a tragic situation like this, communities in Michigan always find a way to come together.
Absolutely.
And support each other. And not only did you hear from Governor Whitmer, but State Senator Weber, we saw Congressman John James, who was right next to Mike Bouchard, the sheriff, as Bouchard was giving his initial address following the shooting at the splash pad. Along with the mayor of Rochester Hills as well. So all of these officials obviously showing support together by banding together. That is a very strong visual cue to the people who are watching, knowing that no matter what agency, no matter what area of government you come from, they're working in collaboration. But, you know, we have to talk about the difficult part of this as well, which is that Congress has continued, state lawmakers have continued to grapple with what to do about gun violence. How far is too far in preserving Second Amendment rights, but also seeing if there is something more we can do to prevent gun tragedies like this, especially mass shootings, which we've seen. And as I was basically referencing a little while ago, we saw in May, at the top of May, that mass shootings actually were down in this country in terms of the number of fatalities, in terms of the number of injuries as a result of being shot in a mass shooting situation. And yet we don't know what those numbers will look like. And usually there is something of a lag, but we know that as the summer months approach, which we are heading into now. Right, as the temperatures get warmer, we have seen in certain quote unquote hotspots, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan, for example, a slightly different issue, but trying to focus on dealing with gun violence and violent felons who may be repeat offenders. And we don't know what the circumstances here. All we know in this particular case is that somebody who was not associated, allegedly, with these victims, with this situation, just pulled up, got out of a vehicle, and started firing his weapon, firing at least 28 times, and according to the sheriff, reloading. And as a result, 8 victims were shot, including one as young as 8 years old. And we hope to, again, get another update from Sheriff Mike Bouchard in about 30 minutes from now. We have Dave Spencer, who was at the scene at the Quinder Estates, where there was a containment situation involving that suspect. Camila Miri was on the scene. Okay. We're just getting breaking news that the suspected shooter is dead. Again, we are just getting breaking news right now. You're looking at live images from Sky Fox. The shooter, we can confirm, has died. We have gotten, at this point, no additional information about the circumstances surrounding the suspected shooter's death. However, we can confirm the suspected shooter is dead. And as you're looking right now live from Sky Fox, we're getting a closer look at where the interior perimeter was with the SWAT. You can see the SWAT vehicle. If you're looking at the top of your screen, you see a SWAT member getting out of that vehicle, but they are on either end of a house, and you can see, we can't tell you which one it is yet, but you see a couple houses over there. That SWAT vehicle is moving. But as we were able to tell you in the past 2 minutes, that the shooter of the Rochester Hills Splash Pad is dead. The suspected shooter is dead. Suspected shooter, excuse me. That is correct. And it's something to note, too, from Sky Fox. And again, the reason why we haven't gone to this asset
until we now know that basically this has concluded, this what was an ongoing situation, is because we didn't want to at all give away where law enforcement were, what their tactical plans were. And so now we're able to give you this shot. And something that's notable, Brandon, as you look there, there is no one on the street, right? People are likely in their homes. Dave confirmed to us that some civilians had left. Now, it is also true that in these kind of circumstances, law enforcement can't compel neighboring people to leave their homes. They can't do that. So usually they go door to door, they knock, they tell folks what's happening or give them a basic understanding and tell them to stay in their homes. And everyone appears to be abiding by that. And I'm sure that probably helped law enforcement in bringing this to some kind of closure. Again, we don't know how the suspected shooter died. That has not been given to us at this point, but we can confirm the suspected shooter is dead. We expect an update according to the Oakland County Sheriff.
Yes.
At 11 o'clock, the undersheriff also confirmed to me that there will be an 11 p.m. press conference at the sheriff's office. And we do believe that Dave Spencer is heading there, and he's been following this very closely. He'll give us an update. It should give us more information about the circumstances surrounding the death of this suspected shooter. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, a much quieter scene. And when we came to Dave, the last time we came to Dave before he went over to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, he was trying to walk up to Sheriff Mike Bouchard and ask a question. And at that time, the sheriff said, "Hey, we got this news conference."
All right. Well, we're going to now go to a break. We expect to be back for you on air. But for now, we can confirm a suspected shooter in this standoff is now dead after 8 people were shot in Rochester Hills at a splash pad.
Well, well, well. I thought that guy might be running around. I'm just a mess. I thought that guy might still be running around that mobile park. I was a little bit concerned, so I was going to stay until 11, but I probably won't now. We know that it's calm. We know that everybody's safe, and I'll probably see what happens more so in the morning. And yeah, I'll probably leave it at that. So guys, let's hope everybody is safe and sound. 8 of the 8 people were shot. It sounds like the youngest was 8 years old. So let's keep them on our prayers. And with that said, guys, thanks for being here with me. It's just nonstop these days. It's just going crazy. That shit crazy out there. So I appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Hit the bell. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye. All right. I guess I have to do this. Bye.
Dun 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 dun.